The Kingdom of Armenia, also the Kingdom of Greater Armenia, or simply Greater Armenia, was a monarchy which existed from 321 BC to 428 AD. Its history is divided into successive reigns by three royal dynasties: Orontid, Artaxiad and Arsacid. The root of the kingdom lies in one of the satrapies of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia called Armenia, which was formed from the territory of the Kingdom of Ararat after it was conquered by the Median Empire in 590 BC. The satrapy became a kingdom in 321 BC during the reign of the Orontid dynasty after the conquest of Persia by Alexander the Great, which was then incorporated as one of the Hellenistic kingdoms of the Seleucid Empire. Under the Seleucid Empire, the Armenian throne was divided in two: Armenia Maya and Sophene, both of which passed to members of the Artaxiad dynasty in 189 BC. During the Roman Republic's eastern expansion, the Kingdom of Armenia under Tigranes the Great reached its peak from 83 to 69 BC, after it reincorporated Sophene and conquered the remaining territories of the falling Seleucid Empire, effectively ending its existence and raising Armenia into an empire for a brief period until it was itself conquered by Rome in 69 BC. The remaining Artaxiad kings ruled as clients of Rome until they were overthrown in 12 AD due to the possible allegiance to Rome's main rival, Parthia. During the Roman-Parthian Wars, the Arsacid dynasty of Armenia was founded when Tiridates I, a member of the Parthian Arsacid dynasty, was proclaimed king of Armenia in 52. Throughout most of its history during this period, Armenia was heavily contested between Rome and Parthia, and the Armenian nobility was divided among pro-Roman, pro-Parthian and neutrals. From 114 to 118, Armenia briefly became a province of the Roman Empire under Emperor Trajan. The Kingdom of Armenia often served as a client state, a vassal at the frontier of the two large empires and the successors, the Byzantine and Sassanid empires. In 301, Tiridates III proclaimed Christianity as the state religion of Armenia, making the Armenian kingdom the first state to embrace Christianity officially. During the Byzantine-Sasanian Wars, Armenia was ultimately partitioned into Byzantine Armenia in 387 and Persian Armenia in 428. History. Origins. The geographic Armenian highlands, then known as the highlands of Ararat, was originally inhabited by Proto-Armenian tribes which did not yet constitute a unitary state or nation. The highlands were first united by tribes in the vicinity of Lake Van into the Kingdom of Van. The kingdom competed with Assyria over supremacy in the highlands of Ararat and the Fertile Crescent. Both kingdoms fell to Iranian invaders from the neighboring east in the 6th century BC. Its territory was reorganized into a satrapy called Armenia. The Orontid dynasty ruled as satraps of the Achaemenid Empire for 3 centuries until the empire's defeat against Alexander the Great's Macedonian Empire at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, a Macedonian general named Neoptolemus obtained Armenia until he died in 321 BC, and the Orontids returned, not as satraps, but as kings. Orontid dynasty Oronts III and the ruler of Lesser Armenia, Mithridates, recognized themselves independent, thus elevating the former Armenian satrapy into a kingdom, giving birth to the kingdoms of Armenia and Lesser Armenia. Oronts III also defeated the Thessalian commander Menon, who wanted to capture Spurs gold mines. Weakened by the Seleucid Empire, which succeeded the Macedonian Empire, the last Orontid king, Oronts IV, was overthrown in 200 and 201 BC, and the kingdom was taken over by a commander of the Seleucid Empire, Artaxiad, who is presumed to be related to the Orontid dynasty himself. Artaxiad dynasty. The Seleucid Empire's influence over Armenia had weakened after it was defeated by the Romans in the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC. A Hellenistic Armenian state was thus founded in the same year by Artaxiad alongside the Armenian Kingdom of Sophene led by Zariadas. Artaxiad seized Javandashat, united the Armenian highlands at the expense of neighboring tribes and founded the new royal capital of Artaxata near the Araxes River. According to Strabo and Plutarch, Hannibal Barca received hospitality at the Armenian court of Artaxiad. The authors add an apocryphal story of how Hannibal planned and supervised the building of Artaxata. The new city was laid on a strategic position at the juncture of trade routes that connected the ancient Greek world with Bactria, India and the Black Sea, which permitted the Armenians to prosper. Tigranes the Great saw opportunity for expansion in the constant civil strife to the south. In 83 BC, at the invitation of one of the factions in the interminable civil wars, he entered Syria and soon established himself as ruler of Syria, putting the Seleucid Empire virtually at an end, and ruled peacefully for 17 years. During the zenith of his rule, Tigranes the Great extended Armenia's territory outside of the Armenian highland over parts of the Caucasus and the area that is now southeastern Turkey, Iran, Syria and Lebanon, becoming one of the most powerful states in the Roman East. Roman rule. Armenia came under the ancient Roman sphere of influence in 66 BC, after the Battle of Tigris and the final defeat of Armenia's ally, Mithridates VI of Pontus. Mark Antony invaded and defeated the kingdom in 34 BC, but Romans lost hegemony during the final war of the Roman Republic in 3230 BC. In 20 BC, Augustus negotiated a truce with the Parthians, making Armenia a buffer zone between the two major powers. Augustus installed Tigranes V as king of Armenia in AD 6, but ruled with Erato of Armenia. The Romans then installed Mithridates of Armenia as client king. Mithridates was arrested by Caligula, but later restored by Claudius. Subsequently, Armenia was often a focus of contention between Rome and Parthia, with both major powers supporting opposing sovereigns and usurpers. The Parthians forced Armenia into submission in AD 37, but in AD 47 the Romans retook control of the kingdom. In AD 51 Armenia fell to an Iberian invasion sponsored by Parthia, led by Radamistus. Tigranes V of Armenia ruled from AD 58, again installed by Roman support. The period of turmoil ends in AD 66, when Tiridates I of Armenia was crowned king of Armenia by Nero. For the remaining duration of the Armenian kingdom, Rome still considered it a client kingdom de jure, but the ruling dynasty was of Parthian extraction, and contemporary Roman writers thought that Nero had de facto yielded Armenia to the Parthians. Arsacid dynasty. Under Nero, the Romans fought a campaign against the Parthian Empire, which had invaded the Kingdom of Armenia, allied with the Romans. After gaining Armenia in 60, then losing it in 62, the Romans sent the Legio 15 Apollinaris from Pannonia to Neas Domitius Corbulo, legatus of Syria. In 63, strengthened further by the legions 3 Gallica v Macedonica ex Fretensis and 22, General Corbulo entered into the territories of Vologases I of Parthia, who then returned the Armenian kingdom to Tiridates, King Vologases I's brother. Another campaign was led by Emperor Lucius Verus in 162 to 165, after Vologases IV of Parthia had invaded Armenia and installed his chief general on its throne. To counter the Parthian threat, Verus set out for the east. His army won significant victories and retook the capital. Sohaemus, a Roman citizen of Armenian heritage, was installed as the new client king. But during an epidemic within the Roman forces, Parthians retook most of the lost territory in 166. Sohaemus retreated to Syria, and the Arsacid's dynasty was restored power over Armenia. After the fall of the Arsacid dynasty in Persia, the succeeding Sasanian Empire aspired to re-establish Persian control. The Sassanid Persians occupied Armenia in 252. However, in 287, Tiridates III the Great was established king of Armenia by the Roman armies. After Gregory the Illuminator's spreading of Christianity in Armenia, Tiridates accepted Christianity and made it his kingdom's official religion. The traditional date for Armenia's conversion to Christianity is established at 301, which precedes the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great's conversion and the Edict of Milan by a dozen years. In 387, the Kingdom of Armenia was split between the Eastern Roman Empire and the Persians. Western Armenia quickly became a province of the Roman Empire under the name of Armenia Minor, and becoming later Byzantine Armenia. Eastern Armenia remained a kingdom within Persia until 428, when the local nobility overthrew the king, and the Sassanids installed a governor in his place, beginning the so-called Marspanate period over Persian Armenia. Those parts of historical Armenia remained thus in firm Persian hands until the Muslim conquest of Persia, while the Byzantine parts were also conquered by the invading Arabs in the course of the 7th century. In 885, after years of Roman, Persian, and Arab rule, Armenia regained its independence under the Bagratuni dynasty. Army. The Kingdom of Armenia had an army of 100,000 to 120,000. Under Tigranes the Great, the army of Kingdom of Armenia was at peak under the reign of Tigranes the Great. According to the author of Judith, his army included chariots and 12,000 cavalrymen, probably indicating heavy cavalry, a cataphract, commonly used by Seleucids and Parthians. He also had 120,000 infantrymen and 12,000 mounted archers, which were also an important feature of the Parthian army. Like the Seleucids, the bulk of Tigranes' army were foot soldiers. The Jewish historian Josephus talks of 500,000 men in total, including the camp followers. These latter were the camels, donkeys, and mules for the baggage, innumerable sheep, cattle, and goats for the food supply, which was abundant for each man, and much gold and silver. As a result, the marching Armenian army was a huge irregular force, too many to count, like locusts of the dust of the earth. It was thus not unlike the other enormous Eastern armies of the time. Regardless, the smaller Cappadocian, Greco-Phoenician, and Nabatean armies were no match for the sheer number of soldiers. However, the organized Roman army with its legions posed a much greater challenge to the Armenians. Note that the numbers given by Israelite historians of the time were probably exaggerated, considering the fact that the Hasmonean Jews lost the war against Tigranes. From ancient times in Armenia there existed Azathavria cavalry, which consisted of the Armenian elite. Azathavria cavalry was the main part of the Armenian king's court. Later, in medieval times, Azathavria cavalry or Armenian heavy cavalry was collected from nobles and was known as Arutzi. During times of peace, Armenian cavalry was divided into a number of small groups which took the role of guarding the king and his family as well as Armenian lords. Some part of the Armenian cavalry was always patrolling the Armenian borders under the command of an Armenian general. The group of Armenian cavalry whose main mission was the protection of the Armenian king and his family consisted of 6,000 heavily armored horsemen in the ancient period, and 3,000 horsemen in the medieval period. During times of war, the number of Armenian cavalry could be anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 horsemen or more. Beside heavy cavalry there was also light cavalry, which mainly consisted of mounted archers. Legio I Armeniaca Armenian First Legion. Legio Armeniaca translated from Latin as Armenian Legion, and Prima as First. The Armenian First Legion was one of the later period Roman Empire legions. This legion is mentioned in the late antique text known as Notitia Dignitatum. It is most likely that Armenian First Legion was formed in the 2nd or 3rd centuries AD, in the western part of Kingdom of Armenia, and that its mission was to protect the Armenian lands from intrusion. It should first have been the garrison of Armenian lands which had been under the control of Roman Empire. Armenian First Legion took part in the ill-fated Persian campaign of the Emperor Julianus Oppositor in 363. Legio II Armeniaca Armenian Second Legion. Legio Armeniaca translated from Latin as Armenian Legion, and Secunda as Second. Armenian Second Legion, like Armenian First Legion, was one of the later period Roman Empire legions. This legion is also mentioned in the Notitia Dignitatum. Armenian Second Legion was probably created at the end of the 3rd century or in the beginning of the 4th century. Armenian Second Legion had a permanent camp in one of the northern provinces of the Orient. This legion built a camp in Satala. Armenian Second Legion is furthermore mentioned in the year 360 AD as a part of the garrison of BC.The at the Upper Tigris. In BC.The, Armenian Second Legion served together with legions Parthica and II Flavia. In 390 AD, BC.The was taken by the Persians and a terrible bloodbath ensued against the inhabitants and garrison. Nevertheless, the legion seems to have survived this battle, because it appears in Notitia Dignitatum, which was written in the 5th century. Later on, Armenian Second Legion became a part of the Byzantine army. Mythology and pre-Christian religion. The pre-Christian Armenian pantheon included Aramatst, cognate of the Iranian Ahura Mazda, head of the pantheon identified with Zeus in the Interpretatio Graeca, Amano and Vanatur, god of the Armenian New Year, Navasid, at the end of July. His temple was located in Diadon. Anahit, cognate of the Iranian Anahita, the goddess of fertility and birth, and daughter or wife of Aranmatst. Anahit is identified with Artemis and Aphrodite. Temples dedicated to Anahit were established in Armavir, Artaxiad, Ara the Beautiful, a dying and rising god slain in war against Semiramis. Astaphic, cognate of the Semitic Ishtar, fertility goddess and consort of Vatin, sharing a temple with him at Erech. The holiday of Vardnava was originally in honor of Astaphic, Barsaman, god of sky and weather, probably derived from the Semitic god Baal-Shamin. Hague, legendary forefather of the Armenian people, archer, and slayer of the Titan Bel. Mahr, cognate with the Persian Mithra, god of the sun and light, son of Aramatst, the brother of Anahitan Nain. His center of worship was located in Bagaharuk, and the temple of Gani was dedicated to him. Nain, possible cognate of the Sumerian Nana, daughter of Aranmatst, war and motherhood goddess. Her cult was related to Anahit. Both of the temples located near each other in Gava. Tiratiur, god of wisdom, culture, science and studies. He also was an interpreter of dreams. He was the messenger of the gods and was associated with Apollo. Tyr's temple was located near Artaxiad. Sovana, also called Naup, she was the goddess of rain, sea and water, though she was actually a fiery being who forced rain to fall. The Vatin, cognate of the Iranian Vrithrania, the storm god and Herculean dragon slayer. Derek housed the central temple to Vatin. During the 1st century AD, Christianity spread through Armenia due to the efforts of the apostles Bartholomew and Thaddeus. After persecutions by kings Artaxiad and Arsacid and Its III, Christianity was adopted as the state religion by Its III after he was converted by Gregory the Illuminator. Armenia's adoption of Christianity as the state religion distinguished it from Parthian and Mazdan influence. Zoroastrianism. Until the late Parthian period, Armenia was a predominantly Zoroastrian adhering land. With the advent of Christianity, both paganism and Zoroastrianism gradually started to diminish. The founder of the Arsacid branch in Armenia, Its I, was a Zoroastrian priest Amagus. A noted episode which illustrates the observance by the Armenian Arsacids is the famous journey of Its I to Rome in A.D. 65–66. With the acceptance of Christianity in the earliest 4th century, its presence in the kingdom gradually started to decline. Language. Before the Armenian alphabet was created, Armenians used Aramaic and Greek alphabets, the last of which had a great influence on Armenian alphabet. The Armenian alphabet was created by St. Mesrop Mashtots and Isaac of Armenia in AD 405 primarily for a Bible translation into the Armenian language. Traditionally, the following phrase translated from Solomon's Book of Proverbs is said to be the first sentence to be written down in Armenian by Mashtots. By the 2nd century BC, according to Strabo, the inhabitants of Greater Armenia spoke the Armenian language, implying that modern Armenians are descended from that population. Capitals. Uvandashat. The ancient town sits upon an escarpment overlooking the junction of the Arax River and Achaemenid River. According to Moses Kagan Kathvatsi, Orontid founded Uvandashat to replace Armavir as his capital after Armavir had been left dry by a shift of the Arax. The archaeological site has not been subject of major research, but preliminarily, the fortifications and some remains of palaces have been uncovered. Ancient Uvandashat was destroyed by the army of the Persian king Shapur II in the 360s. Artaxiad. King Artaxiad I founded Artaxiad in 185 BC in the region of Boston within the historical province of Ararat, at the point where Arax River was joined by Metsamor River during the ancient eras, near the heights of Korvarap. The story of the foundation is given by the Armenian historian Moses Korenatsi of the 5th century. Artaxiad traveled to the location of the confluence of the Erisk and Metsamor and taking a liking to the position of the hills, he chose it as the location of his new city, naming it after himself. Quote, according to the accounts given by Greek historians Plutarch and Strabo, Artaxiad is said to have been chosen and developed on the advice of the Carthaginian general Hannibal. The city's strategic position in Arax Valley on the Silk Road soon made Artaxiad a center of bustling economic activity and thriving international trade, linking Persia and Mesopotamia with the Caucasus and Asia Minor. Its economic wealth can be gauged in the numerous bathhouses, markets, workshops, administrative buildings that sprang up during the reign of Artaxiad I. The city had its own treasury and customs. The amphitheatre of Artaxiad was built during the reign of King Artaxerxes II. The remains of the huge walls surrounding the city built by King Artaxerxes I could be found in the area. After losing its status as a capital to Vahashipat and Dvin respectively, Artaxiad gradually lost its significance. Tigran Gegart was founded by the Armenian Emperor Tigranes the Great in the 1st century BC. Tigranakert was founded as the new capital of the Armenian Empire in order to be in a more central position within the boundaries of the expanding empire. Its population was 120,000 and it also had many temples and an amphitheatre. Vafharshipat. In the first half of the 1st century, during the reign of the Armenian Arshakuni king Vologases I, the old town of Varjasavan was renovated and renamed Vagasrapat, which still persists as the official appellation of the city. The original name, as preserved by Byzantine historian Procopius, was Valashabad, Valash city, named after King Balash, Valash of Armenia. The name evolved into its later form by the shift in the medial L into a GH, which is common in Armenian language. Korenatsi mentions that the town of Vargas was totally rebuilt and fenced by Vafharshite to become known as Nawarakagik of Vafharshipat. The city served as a capital for the Ashikuni Kingdom of Armenia between 120–330 AD and remained the country's most important city until the end of the 4th century, when Christianity became the state religion of Armenia. Vafharshipat was time by time called Amiatsan after the name of the mother cathedral. Starting from 301, the city has become the spiritual center of all the Armenian nation, being the home of the Armenian Catholicosate, one of the oldest religious organizations in the world. Vafharshipat was home to one of the oldest schools established by St. Mashdots and the home of the first manuscripts library in Armenia, founded in 480 AD. Starting from the 6th century, the city had lost its importance, especially after the transfer of the seat of the Catholicosate to Dvin in 452, until the foundation of the Bagratid Kingdom of Armenia in 885. After the fall of the Bagratid dynasty in 1045, the city gradually became an insignificant place until 1441, when the seat of the Armenian Catholicosate was transferred from the Cilician town of Sis back to Achaemenid. Dvin. The ancient city of Dvin was built by Khosrow III the Small in 335 on a site of an ancient settlement and fortress from the 3rd millennium BC. Since then, the city had been used as the primary residence of the Armenian kings of the Arsacid dynasty. Dvin had a population of about 100,000 citizens who were in various professions including arts and crafts, trade, fishing, etc. After the fall of the Armenian kingdom in 428, Dvin became the residence of Sassanid-appointed Marspans, Byzantine Kouropalates and later Umayyad and Abbasid-appointed Ostrogans, all of whom were of senior Nakara stock. In 640, Dvin was the center of the Emirate of Armenia. Political geography. Kingdom of Armenia was bordered by Caucasian Albania in the east, by Caucasian Iberia in the north, by the Roman Empire in the west and by Parthia, later succeeded by Sasanian Empire. The border between Caucasian Iberia and Kingdom of Armenia was Kar River, which was also the border between Caucasian Albania and Kingdom of Armenia. After 331 BC, Armenia was divided into Lesser Armenia, the Kingdom of Armenia and the Kingdom of Sophene. In 189 BC, when Artaxiad's reign began, many neighboring countries, using the weakening of the kingdom, conquered the remote parts of the kingdom. Strabo says that Artaxiad raided to the east and reunited Caspian and Patakarin, then raided to the north, where Smerbat Bagratuni defeated Georgian army, reuniting Guguk; to the west, reuniting Karen, Ikgik and Durjan; and to the south, where after many battles with Seleucid Empire he reunited Timuric. But Artaxiad wasn't able to reunite Lesser Armenia and Corduene, Sophene, and the work started by him ended his grandson Tigranes the Great. During Artaxiad's reign, the Kingdom of Armenia covered 350,000 square kilometers. At its peak, under Tigranes the Great, it covered 3 million square kilometers, incorporating, besides Armenia Major, Iberia, Albania, Cappadocia, Cilicia, Armenian Mesopotamia, Osrhoene, Adiabene, Syria, Assyria, Judea and Atropatene. Parthia and also some Arab tribes were vassals of Tigranes the Great. Lesser Armenia's area was 100,000 square kilometers. Provinces: the 15 provinces of the Kingdom of Armenia with the capitals are as follows. Other Armenian regions: Lesser Armenia, 100,000 square kilometers. Armenian Mesopotamia, 20,000 square kilometers. Maps.